Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another night of Live Penguin TV. My name's Megan, and I'm going to be talking to you about all things penguin as we watch the world's smallest species of penguin coming out of the water, crossing the beach, and heading back to their burrows here on Phillip Island in Victoria, Australia. And tonight I'm joined by the lovely Heather. Heather, come on in and tell us what you're going to be doing tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to be monitoring the YouTube questions and probably throwing Megan a couple of curly questions about penguins.
Lovely. Do your worst, Heather.
I will do.
So do send through all of your questions on Facebook and YouTube. Heather will be looking through those ones and choosing some of the best, some of the most interesting, maybe some of the questions that we haven't heard or answered before. So send through all your comments, all your questions. And we'll do our best to get back to some of those live on the air tonight. And if we don't get back to your questions tonight, we will have rangers going through the comments on Facebook and giving you an answer within the next 24 hours. So rest assured, we will be answering all of your questions on Facebook. We don't have that capacity on YouTube. So Heather will be keeping a special eye on the YouTube questions, and we'll try to get back to as many of those as possible live tonight. But if we don't answer your question tonight, tune in tomorrow night. We'll be here with you each and every night for the foreseeable future. So keep coming back, keep asking all your wonderful questions, and we get to see something different each and every night here at the Penguin Parade. So it's definitely worth becoming a Wattle Watcher if you're not already one of our dedicated watchers tuning in every night. I would recommend it. These little penguins always bring a smile to people's faces. Now, we are looking out over Summerlands Beach here on Phillip Island, and we're very lucky to be on Boonwurrung country. So Phillip Island is also known as Millau by the Boonwurrung, who are the traditional custodians of the land that we're here on tonight. And they've been coming here for thousands of years, looking after, caring for this land, taking only what they needed. And I would like to acknowledge the Boonwurrung and their elders, past, present, and emerging, as the traditional custodians and caretakers of the land that we're lucky enough to be joining you from here tonight, and that we're lucky enough to manage and look after here at Phillip Island Nature Parks. Do let us know in the comments where you're joining us from, whether it's here in Australia or anywhere else around the world. And if you know, let us know who the traditional custodians are of the land that you are joining us from tonight as well. Now, I might just scroll across the beach and have a bit of a look for any penguins, because I did hear that there were some penguins splashing around at the water's edge a little bit earlier. And I don't believe any have started to cross just yet, but we will do our best to keep an eye out for them. And I think they might have gone back in the water. Let's have a little bit of a look. What's going on over here? So it is quite a low tide tonight, which is going to make it quite difficult to spot these little penguins as they are coming in. They're going to be quite far away, which will make it a bit harder for us to see them, and that'll also make it a little bit scarier for our little penguins. So right now, they are out here in the water just offshore, and that's where they've been for the last couple of hours, forming groups that we call rafts. So right now, if you were down on the beach, you might be hearing huck, 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 huck. And that's the penguins talking to each other, saying, hey guys, do you want to come in with me? Are we ready to go? And try to form those groups, form those rafts, getting ready to come in and cross the beach. So it's a little bit difficult to see tonight. It is a little bit choppy out there on the water, but what I'm trying to look for is a black line on the surface, which will be one of those rafts of penguins. And I don't think we're going to have too much luck spotting one tonight. But I'm looking at quite a small screen, so if you have us up on your big screen TV at home, you might be able to see a little bit better than me. So if you do spot a raft, do let us know in the comments, and I'll do my best to try and find it for you. But I can't see any just yet. But there have been some penguins around, going in and out, having a look around, but it might be still a bit light for them, so they've probably gone back out into the water, and they'll try again when it's a little bit darker. And you'll notice, if you've tuned in the last few nights, that we have started a little bit later tonight because the penguins have started to come in later. And you guys don't need to listen to me ramble on for 20 minutes before penguins arrive, so we've decided to work to the penguins' time a little bit better, and hopefully they shouldn't be too far away. And I've just spotted a visitor down on the beach, and I'll try and zoom in a little bit so you can see. And there are a lot of silver gulls on the beach, all these little white birds, but if you can see that big bird with the black wings, that one is a Pacific gull. And this is one of the predators of our little penguins. And this is why they're waiting to come out of the water. So these Pacific gulls are nice and big, and they could potentially make a little penguin into a snack. So these penguins are forming those groups for safety in numbers when they cross the beach, and they're waiting till it gets dark. Because once it's dark, these Pacific gulls and other predatory birds like sea eagles, swamp harriers, whistling kites, they can't see to hunt. So they'll go to roost for the night, and that's when it's safest for the penguins to cross the beach. But you can see that this Pacific gull's still out and about, wandering around the beach. So the penguins will probably wait till he's gone before they come out on this section of the beach. And we did have a Pacific gull hanging around last night as well, but he left just as the penguins started to come in. So hopefully the same thing happens again tonight, and our penguins are going to be nice and safe crossing the beach. I'll have a little bit more of a scroll across, because we did have another visitor on the beach earlier. I'll see if it's still there. Let's have a look. Maybe not. No, we did have a black swan on the beach. So we do have black swans here in Australia, and we don't often see them down on the beach, but there was one hanging around, but it looks like it's time for the swan to go to bed as well. So we'll go back over to the water, and we'll keep an eye out for those penguins. Now, all of this land that we're scrolling across and looking at here on Live Penguin TV, all of this area is managed by Phillip Island Nature Park. So that's who we are. And we do look after about 20% of Phillip Island. So we manage our entire penguin colony here on the Sunland Peninsula of about 32,000 little penguins. So that's not just the penguin parade. We also look after this entire southern coastline that you can see in front of us here. So you can see Pyramid Rock out in the distance, Cape Woolamai, right out the other end of the island. We look after this entire coastline, many of our beautiful beaches. We have our Koala Conservation Reserve, where we are rehabilitating some koalas who were affected in our recent bushfires. We also look after Churchill Island Heritage Farm, the Nobby Centre, and many of our beautiful wetlands and woodlands as well. So we do hope that when it's safe for you to do so, if you are in regional Victoria, you can already come and visit us. If you're in Melbourne, we hope to see you back really soon. And then the rest of Australia and the rest of the world, we do hope to be able to welcome you back to not just the Penguin Parade, but all of these beautiful places. Because when you are able to come visit us, that helps contribute to the work we do here. We are a non-for-profit organisation. So any tickets that you buy or souvenirs that you purchase, that money, that profit goes back into conservation, research and education, helping us look after our little penguins and the rest of our wildlife and our wild places here on Phillip Island. And if you're not yet able to come visit us, you can help us out by donating to the Penguin Foundation. You can adopt a penguin, become a penguin pal, and that money goes right back into that conservation, research and education, as well as funding our penguin hospital, our wildlife hospital, not just for penguins, but all of our wildlife from around the island. So any spare change you have that you might be able to contribute to our Penguin Foundation does make a world of difference for our wildlife here on Phillip Island. And the penguins are keeping us waiting now. I don't know where that early group went. They must have run back in the water. So while we're waiting patiently, I might get Heather to let us know how many penguins were last night. I can see a lot of you in the comments are dying to know. If you haven't made your guesses as to how many you think there were, make sure you lock those in with your family right now. And then we're going to pass over to Heather and we'll find out how many were there last night, Heather.
Megan, last night there were 1,663 penguins and they first crossed the beach at 8:26.
Ooh, 1,626?
No.
Was it? Oh, no.
1,663.
63. There we go.
Sorry.
1,663. I got it. So see who was the closest. If you have a little competition in your family, post in the comments, let us know who won. We certainly like to have a nightly penguin lotto here at the Penguin Parade amongst the penguin rangers. We all write down how many penguins we think will come in at the start of the night, and whoever is closest at the end wins a chocolate prize. So it's a fun little game to play, guessing how many penguins cross the beach. And they did come in at 8:26 last night, but I know they were hanging out at the water's edge a lot earlier than that. So they're being a little bit more cautious tonight, waiting out there in the water. And I still can't see any just yet. And tonight we do have Ranger Sonia counting the penguins. So Sonia is keeping a close eye out for us, and she's going to let us know if there are any penguins coming up to the water's edge. And if they do start crossing, she'll let us know, and she'll also be counting these little guys as they cross the beach. So if we go over to the main beach here, we might be able to see where Ranger Sonia is. There we go. So she's up in that little white building that you can see up between the viewing stands there. So Sonia's up there with a pair of binoculars. She's looking out, scanning across the beach, waiting for that first group of penguins to start crossing. And once they start, she'll wait till they get more than halfway across the beach. And once we have at least 5 penguins cross, that's when we have a start to our official penguin count. And that count will go for 50 minutes. So just under an hour, we count these penguins for. And that's the way that they've been counted since about 1968. So we keep counting them the same way, arrange it with a pair of binoculars so that we can keep that data consistent over all of those years. We can compare it. So even if we make a mistake here and there, it's such a big, wide data set, and the error's about the same each time. So it makes a great comparison over the years. And we've just seen our penguin numbers increasing incredibly. So since the 80s, our penguin numbers have more than doubled, and we've definitely seen that reflected in the number of penguins crossing the beach here on Phillip Island. So we had a great number, over 1,600 penguins last night. Let's hope we have even more tonight. Earlier, Heather and I were chatting about how many is the most penguins that we've ever seen. I know what the record is. Heather, do you know what the most penguins you've ever seen was?
I know that the most ever were 4,398.
Wow, 4,398, the most penguins ever counted. I bet you were very glad you weren't counting that night, Heather.
I think maybe the most I've ever counted was around about 3,700 and something.
Wow, 3,700 for Heather to count. That's an incredible effort. Heather is one of our seasoned penguin counters. She is a penguin counting expert, so I'm sure she didn't miss a penguin, even with over 3,000.
Definitely not.
No, not at all. That's incredible. Oh, here we go. The penguins have come back.
Water's edge.
Yes, there's a group down here right in front of us. I'll see if I can zoom in. Oh, they're running back in the water. So as I was saying before, this is the most dangerous time of the penguins' day, coming out of the water and crossing this beach to get back to their burrows. So they are quite cautious. These guys aren't just running out of the water across the sand. They're having a bit of a look around, making sure that there aren't any predators around, make sure all those Pacific gulls have gone to bed for the night before they do make their way across the beach. And they're kind of regrouping, making sure they're all nice and close together, because they do only have a small group, these little penguins, a small raft. Now they're on land. They are a waddle of penguins is what we like to call them. So they're waddling up together, getting ready to cross. And if something does give them a fright, they will run back in the water like they just did. Don't do it again, guys. They can't decide whether they want to cross or not just yet. But if they do feel threatened, they will go back into the water because that's where they are the safest. The water is where they're adapted to be. That's what they're best at, is being out at sea. And that's where they spend about 80% of their time. And they can be out there for days, weeks, up to a month without coming onto land. So it is what they're really good at. It's what they're made to do. And it's where they're the safest. And you can see, I'll try and get a little bit closer. That's because of their fantastic coloration. That's one of the many things that keeps them safe out at sea. And our little penguins have something called counter coloration, which means that all of their back is blue and all of their front is white. So when they're floating on the surface of the water, even if they're having a little power nap, they blend in with the ocean from above. If you're looking down at them, and if you're looking up from below, they blend in with the sky. And we have two little shell gritters up on the highway camera. I might quickly, I'm going to have a quick close up on them before they run past, before this group crosses. Two little mama penguins heading down to the beach. So these are penguin mothers to be. They currently have eggs developing inside them, and they're walking down to the beach to eat some little pieces of shell. So it's what we call shell grit. And that is to get that extra calcium to help build the shells of their eggs. So it takes a lot of calcium that they have to take out of their bones to put into developing those eggs. So if they're getting a bit of a pregnancy craving, feeling like they're a little bit low on their calcium stores, they will start to do this shell gritting behavior, walking down to the beach, eating those little pieces of shell. Oh, and it looks like we have a big group of penguins coming in behind this raft. This penguin at the back is seeing them. He's running in saying, come on guys, come cross with us. We want a few more pals to cross with, makes us feel a little bit safer. So these guys should join up together. There we go, he's joined up with them and he's going to bring them up to join this group. And there are no leaders in a raft or a waddle of penguins. It's just a group, and whoever is feeling the bravest will start waddling away, and the rest of the penguins will usually follow. And the same goes for if a penguin is feeling a little bit scared and they run back, then most of the other penguins will usually follow them and run back into the water as well. And I think there's another big group coming in behind them as well. Goodness, I don't know where to look. I'm going to zoom out so we can watch this group starting to cross and the big group coming in just behind them to the left. So they made a big disturbance on the surface of the water, and I think there's another one coming in as well just behind that first group. You can see all that disturbance on the top of the water as those penguins swim in, showing you just how well camouflaged they are, even in a big group. And they're all coming in and they're going to join together. What a fantastic first couple of groups. I don't envy Sonia trying to count these guys as they come across the beach. But if you do want to practice your penguin counting, if you would one day like to come and work for us and be a penguin ranger and a penguin counter here at the Penguin Parade, try your hand at counting these penguins. This is definitely a challenging one. And Sonia is doing this just with a pair of binoculars. So she doesn't have any fancy devices to count these penguins tonight. She's just using her terrific penguin counting brain and her eyes and her binoculars and a pen and paper to count these little guys as they cross. That's a great couple of groups. We'll try and follow them as they make their way across. I do hope these guys at the back can catch up and they might join to make one mega waddle, one huge group of penguins. And now is probably when we've started our penguin count. And maybe if Sonia isn't too busy, she might even let us know how many penguins are in these groups. And these guys are in a hurry. Have we had an official start now?
We have had an official start, and that was at 8:30. And the first group was actually two penguins.
Really? I didn't even see them. Two penguins snuck past us.
They did sneak past us.
Wow. So they aren't terribly camouflaged on land, but two penguins snuck past. They must have been in a big hurry before the rest of these guys. But you do need 5 penguins to start the penguin count. So those 2 penguins, they will be counted in our total, but they can't start the count all on their own. And it actually looks like one of our little shell gritters might have already made it down to the beach, just to the left of this group crossing. Oh, sorry if I can focus. That penguin there was kind of waddling around, pecking at the ground, maybe getting some of those little shells. Or maybe it's one in this group. Not sure where it's gone now. I'll zoom out. These guys are almost up through the rocks, and they are a lot harder to see in the rocks. So Sonia's probably using that little break in between the rocks, counting them as they go over the sand. And while these guys are clambering through the rocks, oh, there's another shell girder up on the highway camera on the top right there. Let's see if I can go out a bit further. I'll try and get as many penguins on the screen for you guys as I can. And while we're watching these guys cross, we might get a question. I'm sure you've had lots of fantastic questions coming through on the Facebook and YouTube streams. Heather?
Yeah, so it's not really a penguin question. It's a question about a Pacific gull. So I cannot find the person yet, but the question was a Pacific gull compared to a silver gull, what is the size difference?
Oh, okay. The size difference between a silver gull and a Pacific gull. So I would say that Pacific gulls are probably about twice the size of a silver gull. So those silver gulls, they're the pesky ones that all try and steal your fish and chips. I would be pretty terrified if a Pacific gull tried to steal my fish and chips, that is for sure. So their body's probably a similar size almost to a penguin, maybe slightly bigger, but they have a massive bill. And we do have another type of gull called a kelp gull, and they look very, very similar to the Pacific gulls, and they are also one of the penguin predators. So you might see some of those around. If you are down at the beach, you might see some Pacific gulls, some kelp gulls, and those are the really big ones. And the silver gulls are those smaller ones that will definitely try and steal your food if you let them. So that's a good question. I don't think we've talked too much about the Pacific gulls before, but we've seen them the last couple of nights hanging around, but it doesn't look like they're trying to catch our little penguins. Our penguins are quite safe. Now it's dark enough. They're in their nice big group. I don't think they're going to be bothered by these Pacific gulls. And they're almost all the way up across the rocks now. And we did mention that the most penguins we've ever seen crossing here at the Penguin Parade. And I think a few nights ago I might have mentioned the least number we've ever had. So if you didn't tune in that night, the least number of penguins we've ever counted crossing the beach here at the Penguin Parade was one night where we only had 8 penguins cross the beach. So we've already seen way more than that. There's definitely more than 8 penguins there, I know that much. But that was a night in the middle of winter, and we had a big sea fog rolling. The penguins couldn't see where they were going, so we think that they just decided to stay out at sea. But in winter, we get fewer penguins anyway, because they do have to spend longer out there looking for food. And there they go, climbing down the hill, going across the creek. So we do have a little creek here now. If you are a regular watcher, you might have noticed that the pool is gone. So we did have a little pool here that the penguins like to swim through, but that pool overflowed and it caused a few problems. It shorted out some of our live streaming equipment, so the pool's being filled in, and now the penguins have this little creek to waddle across. So not as fun as swimming through a nice big pool. Unfortunately, Stephen won't be able to judge their dives anymore, but we'll get to see them jumping and swimming through the creek. I love watching them go through just that little bit of water where they're not quite sure whether they want to be swimming or walking, so they kind of do a little bit of both, kind of walking but using their flippers to help them move along, and you can see them kind of doing that there. And it looks like we even have a penguin swimming up the creek. What are you doing? Let's see if we can see him a bit better. And this one's going down to join him. They're just going to have a little swim, a little half swim, half waddle up the creek. They do like to be in the water. So if they can, they'll do that as much as they can. We do have quite a few penguins who, when the creek is dry, they like to use the creek as a path. So now that it's flooded, they'll quite happily just swim up the creek as far as they can, going back to their burrows. But we are quite lucky this time of year. We are seeing lots of penguins crossing the beach because we are in the middle of our penguin breeding season. And I'll go over to the highway camera because we have a bunch of penguins just coming around the corner. These guys are in a hurry because they're heading home to sit on their eggs or feed their chicks. So most of our penguins at the moment throughout the colony are breeding. So some of them are a little bit further ahead than others, particularly our penguins here at the Penguin Parade. Most of them do have older chicks. Oh, and this penguin's going down to the beach. That might be one of our shell gritters going down the creek. And I might actually head over to the burrows and we'll see if we can spot some of those penguin chicks, because they are at that age now where they are left home alone by mum and dad, and they'll be coming out of their burrows, looking around, trying to find their parents to give them some food. And we do have a goose here as well. So I know you guys love our geese. So this is a Cape Barren goose, and it's a little bit hard to see there. But they are beautiful birds, these Cape Barren geese. They're not really a foe of the penguins, as much as they do sometimes like to stand in the middle of a penguin pathway, and the penguins are a little bit cautious trying to go around them, and they might make them wait a little while. The geese and the penguins usually steer clear of each other, and the goose certainly won't try and eat the penguins, so I'll leave that goose be. But we are lucky that we have incredible numbers of Cape Barren geese around Phillip Island, because they are actually the second rarest species of goose in the whole world, and they are beautiful animals. Here we go. Here's one of the penguin burrows I was looking for. Let's zoom in and see who's home. So there were 2 chicks that lived in this burrow. I'll try and focus. The grass has grown so long, it's so hard to see. But this looks like a little penguin family. So you'll usually, in one of these boxes, you can fit 4 penguins. So you'll be able to fit a male penguin, a female penguin, and 2 chicks. And they'll almost always lay 2 eggs and raise 2 chicks. And what we're probably seeing here is 2 of the chicks and 1 adult. So I think the 2 on the right look like they have a little bit of fluff on the back of their neck. So one on the right definitely looks a little bit fluffy. And that'll be one of those penguin chicks. And they are, at the moment, most of them as big as, if not bigger than their parents. So a normal adult penguin weighs about 1 kilo. Some of the chicks we've been weighing at the moment have been weighing up to about 1,400 grams. So almost 1.5 kilos, which is an incredible weight for a penguin chick. That means that very soon these guys are going to be ready to head out to sea, and they're going to have a great chance to be able to learn to find food. These guys very soon, mum and dad won't be coming back to feed them. They'll have to head out and fend for themselves out at sea. And it looks like they're even practicing flapping their flippers, learning how to swim for when they're ready to head out. And there are a few more burrows. I'll see if there's any more chicks around. I know some of them were getting quite old. I think Heather has...
So I've just heard over the radio, Megan, that the moon's looking pretty spectacular down on the beach at the moment. So maybe we could have a little look if we could see the moon.
Okay. Sounds like a
pretty good.
I'll come back to these little chicks and we'll head over to the beach and see if we can spot the beautiful moon that's just come up with some more penguins crossing, I hope. Plenty of penguins crossing. And wow, you're right. That's beautiful, Heather. The moon has just risen. We did have a blue moon last night, so the second full moon in the month, and it almost looks like the sun is rising. So that might make our penguins a little bit more cautious. That beautiful bright moon coming up over the horizon. And we'll head back over and we'll see if they're still bravely crossing. There we go. There's plenty of penguins making their way through the rocks, and they're much more spread out. So they're actually probably feeling a lot safer now that it is a little bit darker. The moon's just come up. They're probably not even noticing it. Just waddling through the rocks. Not too frightened now. As it does get darker and darker, the penguins do seem to get more confident crossing in those smaller groups. And some penguins who are extra brave, they will even cross on their own. There's plenty of penguins coming in now. So we do, it will make it a little bit harder for Sonia trying to count those penguins as they're all spread out. And we do have quite a few different ways to see how many penguins are coming in across our beaches around the penguin colony. So as well as Sonia counting our penguins tonight, we do also have something called our penguin weighbridge. So up behind where Sonia is, up in the skybox that we were looking at earlier, we do have that little weighbridge, and it's a little platform that we've put in a natural penguin pathway. So just like one of our pathways here, we'll watch just like this one going up the hill. Sorry, I'll try and get a bit of a better view. So we have a big pathway going up here. So we have a pathway just like that up near the main stands. And as the penguins walk through this pathway, they quite happily walk over our little platform, over our little weighbridge. And as they do that, it actually weighs our penguins, tells us how many come through, and it scans their microchips, because up behind our weighbridge is our penguin study site. And that's the one that myself and Jordan are lucky enough to be monitoring. So we have most of those penguins in that study site have a microchip in the back of their neck. So like one you might have in your pet cat or dog, and many of the penguins coming in here will have one as well, because we do have another study site down here. Those wooden boxes we were looking at earlier are some of our research boxes. So those penguins have a little microchip that gives us an ID, telling these penguins apart. So I don't know about you guys, but they all look quite similar to me. We probably look all the same to the penguins, but I couldn't tell them apart. So by having a microchip, we can scan a penguin, we know who they are, and when they cross the weighbridge, it's like scanning your groceries at the supermarket. They'll go over, beep, beep. The weighbridge will scan those penguins and weigh them, and we know who crosses that pathway. We know exactly who they are, and we know how much they weighed when they went out, how much they weighed when they came back, how long they've been out at sea for, and it tells us a great deal of information about our penguins without having to go out and interfere with them at all. And we do have a second weighbridge along the peninsula as well, in a completely natural site. So it's away from where there's any people, there's not even any artificial boxes, it's completely natural. All natural burrows dug in the ground by the penguins, and they waddle through our other weighbridge up along the peninsula. And we can compare those different sites. We can see that our penguin numbers here are just as good along there. Oh, and you might have seen that a bird just flew overhead. I didn't see what it was, but I think it was just a silver gull. Got our penguins a little bit riled up, and it's disturbed their preening. So they were quite happily resting on the rocks. They do feel very safe once they get up onto these rocks, once they cross the beach, having a bit of a preen. But that bird spooked them a little bit, and some of them are moving on. Some of them, they just don't care. They're in the salon, as Sky likes to call it, preening their feathers, making sure they're looking good. They might be heading home and potentially seeing their partner, seeing their chicks. They might even be seeing some potential girlfriends or boyfriends along the way. So all these penguins are making sure they look good, and some of them are starting to move on. And as they do that, I might just have another look across the beach, and we'll see if there's many penguins still coming in. It's getting a little bit dark, so we're not going to be able to see them on the beach for much longer.
Would you like another question?
Yes, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Heather.
How long do penguins sleep when they're out at sea?
Ooh, that's a great question. So how long do penguins sleep when they're out at sea? So penguins, they don't need to come in and sleep the whole night like we do. That's not why they come onto land. They will happily sleep out at sea, and they only need to sleep for about 4 minutes at a time. And they'll just do that whenever they're a little bit tired, maybe every couple hours or so. They'll stop, have a little bit of a rest, and have a nap floating on the surface of the water, which is quite incredible. And they can do that because of their excellent camouflage. They can be sleeping on the surface, and they don't have to worry about any predators. And they'll also do that when they're on land. So sometimes as these penguins are walking along the highway, actually there's some penguins coming along the highway right now, so I'll zoom over to them. I think we even saw a penguin a few nights ago who just stopped and was lying down, and a few people were concerned. I know it doesn't look right when a penguin just stops and lies down, but they're just having a sleep. If you wait about 4 minutes, that penguin will probably get up and keep waddling along. Some of these little guys have to go up to 2 kilometers with those teeny tiny little legs, so they do have a long way to go, a long way to waddle, so they will have little rests along the way, and if they're getting really tired, they might even have a little nap. And penguins are quite interesting that they're, you might think they're nocturnal because you see them coming in onto land at night, but they are something a little bit different. So the special term for it is polyphasic, which is a little bit fancy, but what it pretty much means is that they are active when they need to be. So when they're on land at night, they're active during the day, and they're active at night, and they'll stay in their burrows during the day. And when they're out in the water, they're most active during the day, and then they'll rest a little bit more at night. And that's because they are using their eyesight to find their way and find food when they're out at sea. So when it gets dark, they can't hunt out at sea. So they do need that light to be able to fish. And we've actually found that how deep they dive changes depending on the time of the day. So in the morning and the evening, when it's not quite as light, the penguins don't dive down as far as in the middle of the day when the sun's right overhead and it's really bright and they can see down further in the water. So they'll dive down further the further they can see in the water, which is quite interesting. And the furthest we've ever seen a penguin dive is about 72 meters, which is quite impressive when you remember that these little penguins are only about 1 foot tall. So they're really small and they can dive up to 72 meters to catch food. So they're very, very impressive when they're out at sea. I think, do you have another question for me, Heather?
Oh, Megan, I think you should tell the folks of that 72-meter dive how long that penguin held its breath for with those tiny little lungs.
Was it the same penguin?
Oh, I think it was. Well, I'm not 100% sure about that.
So penguins, they do lots of interesting things when they dive down. So I imagine this one penguin's following a fish that's gone straight down really far, but sometimes a fish will run away and they'll be going up and down, and they can do some really long dives. And I'm not sure if the longest dive is the deepest dive, but the longest we've ever seen a penguin hold their breath for is just under 2 minutes. So very impressive. They can hold their breath for a long time with those teeny tiny little lungs. So they can dive down really far. They can dive down for a long time trying to catch that food. So that is what they're really, really good at. We do have lots of good penguin numbers crossing the beach. I'm sure there's lots of penguins that Sonia's been counting, lots of penguins probably crossing our weighbridge. But there was something else interesting that I was lucky enough to do this week. So we do have another one of our sites where it's a little bit hard to count the penguins. We don't have a weighbridge there. So something we were doing to try and work out how many penguins were crossing the beach, we went out and we started to count the penguin footprints, which it wasn't very easy, but we were looking for the little footprints, trying to find each individual penguin that had crossed the beach, going out to sea that morning and coming in the night before. And it was great just seeing all the different animals that had spent their night wandering across the beach. We saw Ricali tracks, wallaby tracks, there were short-tailed shearwater tracks, as well as silver gulls and our little penguin tracks. And we found one little track going up the beach that was really interesting. It was a little bit different from all the others because there was one little penguin foot and then there was a little circle. And what it was a penguin who only had 1 foot and the other one was a little stump. So we were quite excited to see that this penguin who's missing a foot was doing a great job walking up the beach. And he went out again in the morning, so we saw 2 sets of his tracks, and obviously was doing very well to make his way up and back. And we have seen a penguin with 1 foot here at the Penguin Parade. I haven't seen him in a while. I know Heather's seen him a few times before, and we used to call him Stumpy because he also only had 1 foot. So it's good to know that those penguins can still do well and survive, and they're probably some penguins that we've had here at our wildlife clinic, because we do have a lot of penguins that come in who are sick or injured. I'm just going to go over to the highway camera. Oh, and Heather's just let me know that we only have 5 minutes left, so not long left. Do get in all of your questions and we'll try and answer 1 or 2 more before we need to go. But one of the main reasons we do get penguins brought into our wildlife clinic is entanglements. So that's the main reason that this penguin has probably lost a foot, is that he's been out at sea fishing and he's been tangled up in something that shouldn't be there. So we did have a penguin one night who came in across the beach and it looked like it was really struggling. And the rangers went out and caught it and found 15 metres worth of fishing line wrapped around this penguin's foot, and it was dragging up a whole clump of seaweed all wrapped up in this fishing line. So where we see it, we do our best to capture those penguins and take them to our wildlife clinic. Sometimes it gets so tightly wrapped that they may lose a foot, but they can be rehabilitated. They can go back out into the wild and they can live a long and happy life, even like little Stumpy.
So Megan, another question is, which is a great question, I think, really. Do penguins like humans, or are they scared of humans?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So penguins tolerate humans. I wouldn't say penguins like humans. They definitely don't like sudden noises or sudden movements. They definitely never get used to being handled. But these penguins who we're watching tonight, people have been coming to watch them for their whole lives. So they're very used to having people come in here, standing along the boardwalks, watching them. So they don't mind that we're here. We don't bother them. They don't dislike us unless you were to go and try and touch one. And then they would get quite cranky. They might give you a bit of a bite. They might poop on you. So I definitely wouldn't recommend trying to give a penguin a pat or a cuddle. They're not as cute and cuddly as they look. But no, unfortunately, you don't want to adopt a penguin physically. A penguin adoption you might make through the Penguin Foundation is a symbolic adoption. You don't get to have a penguin live in your home with you because they are wild animals. They don't ever get used to being handled. They will tolerate us, but apart from that, they are wild, so they don't really want to see much more of us than that. But if we do want to help protect our little penguins, you can donate to the Penguin Foundation, you can adopt a penguin, and you can stop those potential entanglements that I was talking about before. So you can stop another penguin having to become like Stumpy or potentially worse situation than that. And that's by trying to stop those potential hazards ending up out in the ocean in the first place. Or if you see something on the beach that might pose a hazard to a animal like a penguin or our other wildlife, you can pick that up. So there's many things like fishing line that I mentioned, and we get a lot of seals that unfortunately get wrapped up in trawl net, or even old shopping plastic bags or hats. But one big one that's quite easy to stop ending up out in the ocean is balloons. So I have some balloons here with the ribbon attached. So these balloons, these ones might have been at a party, might have been a birthday party or Halloween. I did find some Halloween themed balloons on one of our beaches last year. And they are great to have at your party, but if you fill them with helium, don't release them into the environment. Don't let them outside. Don't let them end up in our oceans, because if they go up into the sky, they don't go up and disappear. They do end up popping and coming back down into the ocean, where they can end up with the string wrapping around an animal like our penguins or seals, or they might even eat that thinking that it's food. So that's one small thing we can all do to help protect our wildlife. If you have a party or outdoor event, you can try doing something like blowing bubbles instead of releasing balloons, and it does make a world of difference for our wildlife. Oh, and there's still lots of penguins crossing the beach. Oh, there's even a couple of penguins home at this little burrow here. Let's have a bit of a closer look at what these guys are doing. What are you getting up to? So these guys are lucky. They have one of those seaside mansions right near the beach. They don't have to walk too far at all to get back to their burrows. I don't know what they were doing before, but they've stopped as soon as I've looked at them. Isn't that always the way? We might zoom back out. And since we don't have long left, we might try and get one more question in. I'm sure you've all been sending through many, many lovely questions through to Heather. And remember, if we don't go back to your questions tonight, we will be answering all the questions on Facebook within the next 24 hours, and we will do our best to answer some of your questions on YouTube tonight. So we've got another question, Heather.
We do have another question. Do penguins close their eyes when they're diving out in the water?
That's a great question. Do penguins close their eyes when they're in the water? So penguins, their eyelids aren't quite like ours. So we have these two regular eyelids that we will close when we're sleeping, but the penguins have a third eyelid that's actually clear, and it acts like kind of like goggles to help their eyes focus in the water when they're diving. So the penguins will close their third eyelid, and they'll keep their regular eyelids open so that they can see when they're diving. So that's a really good question. I love their third little eyelid. It's pretty funny. I have seen some penguins close up blinking their third eyelid, and it actually goes sideways. And it's really, really strange to see, but it's really cool to help them survive out at sea. They have lots of great adaptations to help them survive out there. So we've seen their coloration, their eyes. They have these beautiful beaks for helping them catch food. And their feathers, as well as being excellent camouflage, are also excellent at keeping them nice and dry and warm. And we'll go back over to the highway camera because there's stacks and stacks of penguins walking past there. And these guys, they've been out at sea all day, but they'll still be completely dry underneath their feathers. So they do have 2 layers of feathers, so it's kind of like having a dry suit on over a doona. They're really warm, really dry, and they also kind of have a layer of air trapped against their skin, which is kind of like wearing floaties, which means that when they are sleeping on the surface, they don't have to paddle. That layer of air just allows them to float on the surface of the water. And I'll just do one more look over to the beach to see if, oh yes, Sonia still has plenty of penguins to try and count. They're still, gosh, sorry. I lost my words there because that big group crossing just surprised me. There's still stacks of penguins crossing, but unfortunately our time is up for tonight. We do have to leave you guys. We'll let Sonia continue her big effort of counting. If you sorry, do let us know how many penguins you think crossed the beach tonight. And we'll be able to tell you tomorrow night. So get in all of your guesses, and we will say good night for tonight. If you do want to help donate to the Penguin Foundation, we would love all of your contributions. I'm sorry. Am I going to say good night? Did you want to say anything before we go, Heather?
Good night, everyone. And yeah, tune in tomorrow night to see if your guess of how many penguins crossed the beach tonight was correct. I actually think tonight, Megan, more than last night.
Oh, yeah, it's looking like it.
Thinking that. And shall we do our hug?
Yes, thank you, everybody, and good night. Hug, hug,
hug, hug, hug. Good night.
Hug, hug.